Welcome to the Private Lender Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Let's define what this is. So, oftentimes if people want more control over their retirement account investing, or maybe they've seen some volatility in the stock market or any of those reasons, they just want more options of what they can invest in, they might open a self-directed retirement account like an IRA or a 401k through certain custodians like Equity Trust or Pensco or one of the big ones, or a number of smaller regional providers like custodians and administrators. And once they have these accounts, they can invest in things like purchasing real estate, lending money, other stuff besides just straight funds and whatever they can do fund-wise through the stock market. Now, we've been using self-directed IRA investors, meaning having other people who have cash in their self-directed IRA, they need a place to place it, in choosing our loans. HMB's loans is one of those places they can invest money to earn a good rate of return. We've been working with that since day one of HMB, starting with one or two self-directed IRA investors all the way up until today. We have self-directed IRAs ourselves, so we put outside of our company for, make sure we're not self-dealing it, anything like that. It's another topic, but they should be part of your game plan as well. We're going to talk about why, and we're going to tell a couple stories.
Sure. Well, one of the reasons, and we can start with the why, is when we started out, and we didn't know this obviously at the time, but there's a lot of folks that have, let's just call it retirement accounts for now.
Yeah.
They had retirement accounts that they wanted to potentially have more control over, and they wanted to invest in deals for higher rates of return. And they kind of were just tired of kind of just putting it into the markets and not really having full control over it. And I think what we realized is a lot of people have a lot bigger retirement accounts, and they potentially have investable capital liquid
right
that they want to put into deals. So in essence, it was somewhat easier to raise capital from investors through eventually they put them into secretary. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it ended up being a little bit easier to raise capital to do so because, we'd have meetings with potential investors and they wanted to put money into our deals. But they might have only had, 50 grand, 100 grand liquid of investable capital because, most folks in general, like they don't have tons and tons of money just sitting in a savings account. They have them tied up. They either have them in the market in securities, and potentially, depending on how long they've been in the market, there's a tax basis, a tax burden if you're going to sell those. But a lot of folks did have retirement accounts with upper sixes, even into the seven figures. So naturally, it was just kind of an easier way to have them invest, through that platform.
Yeah, and the liquidity is there for sure, and they have to put it somewhere. Like if you invest in an IRA or 401k at Merrill Lynch, for example, like they will give you the list of plan options and you pick the funds that you want, and there you go. If you have a self-directed IRA at Equity Trust, for example, they don't give you any deals. They don't give you any options of stuff you can invest in. These people need deal flow. Again, if you're in funds, mutual funds, index funds, you don't need deal flow. It's there. It's going to be there. You can make minor changes to it, whatever. Totally different case. So one thing that we found, here's another reason. Obviously, you don't pay tax on money that you earn in a retirement account. So it effectively raises the rate of return. Like self-directed IRA say that you can pay your investors 10%. That's a true 10%. That's a great rate of return. That same to somebody's personal name in their company, that 10 becomes 6 or 7, right? Because of taxes. Right. So a number of these things that we're talking about stood out to us at the very beginning, including a time we went to an Equity Trust conference. I know that I've mentioned this particular custodian a couple of times. It's because they're one of the biggest in the industry, well known. Some people like their customer service, some people don't, but either way, they're a player, so we'll use them as an example. They had a conference years ago in Orlando, which is a big conference town. They had I don't know exactly how many people were going to this particular one, but it was thousands. They were taking over a big hotel conference centered there. And it was basically full of pretty much 50-50 between retirement account owners who had a self-directed IRA and needed deal flow and places to put it, and the people on the other side, like us at the time, who had deals and were running some kind of business and needed investor capital from these people.
Sure.
It was an interesting scene. I wouldn't say that everyone there who was looking to raise capital was totally, you know, I don't know if they had the best deals out there. There's a lot of characters in that crowd. So, you know, like anything else, like any other kinds of investment, you always have buyer beware, like be careful of where you put your money. And then people on the, but we did meet a good number of people and people we ended up doing business with later on. And we just learned a lot more about that whole world of self-directed IRA investing. And one of my main takeaways was, like I said before, I want to emphasize again, the people with these accounts have no deal flow. In all likelihood, they're not in the business of screening investment deals. They're not Gordon Gekko. They're not freaking Mark Cuban, right? Like they're not just looking at deals and picking the best ones to cherry pick and drop their money into. They don't have any deals. They get an account. They're like, oh, this is great. I'm going to have all this control and flexibility with my own retirement account investing. Now, what do I invest in? Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point. And I mean, think about it. You know, think about somebody who's not an entrepreneur, not a business owner, not a full-time investor, but they've had a good, stable job, potentially a high wage earner their whole life, and they followed the system and they put money into their retirement account. They don't know, like they're not deal guys. They don't have access to deals in general.
Right.
So they need someone to help them if they're going to go in that direction. I mean, usually they're in index funds or whatever their advisor advise them to. And early on, I think self-directed IRAs are more popular now than obviously they were 15 years ago when we were out there trying to raise capital, which is actually a good thing if you're trying to raise capital now, because there's less of an education, you know, for it. People know what it is. Back then, they didn't even know what a self-directed IRA was. So we, in essence, it was like, hey, we found somebody who wanted to invest, but let's say they had $500,000, but it was in a regular retirement account. They, you know, we had to go through the process with them to do a rollover into a self-directed IRA custodian, and it kind of together, and it was a learning process for us as well, but it gave them that ability to do so. And, you know, it was interesting, like the stock market was a little bit like it is now, where it was just volatile, and, you know, things go up and down, and people don't like volatility. You know, they want, you know, one of the big benefits of investing in private notes and private lending is it's a pretty good passive return for a capital investor. It's passive. There's not a lot of hands-on, and you're also a pretty good collateralized position. It's a little bit different than using your self-directed IRA to buy a note, or not necessarily buy a rental property or flip a house, which you can do inside an IRA if you want to be an active investor. But it's one of the business models where it truly can be passive if you have access to deal flow. And that's why some of these companies put together these events in order to help their clients, because there's no point of having a self-directed IRA if you don't have anything to invest in. And that was the one thing I always remember is you talk to so many folks and they're like, yep, I have $1 million. I'm going to roll it over to my self-directed IRA. And now what? Like, what am I going to put it into responsibly?
Right.
It's hard to find deals.
Yeah, and I've noticed that some people, like people we met at meetup groups, for example, will have self-directed IRA money, so they realize, or they don't realize, they think that they automatically need to become a lender on their own. Like, but the problem is they don't have deal flow either. They don't have leads that they can screen of good real estate investors that they could potentially lend to, and they certainly don't know how to do it right. They don't know what goes into an underwriting file. They're not able to pull credit, do a valuation on a property, do proper loan documents, everything else. The people who do this lending on their own are usually doing it wrong. We've seen it over and over and over, and it's dangerous. You know, like they could use a proper lending company who knows how to underwrite, who has an attorney who knows how to properly document a file, so they can protect their assets, right? So they can protect their investment. So let's talk about a few places that you can locate these people in case you're a lender, raising capital, looking for self-directed IRA investors. Here's what I would recommend. So first of all, a custodian or administrator is not supposed to recommend anything or any company to invest with, right? They don't give straight recommendations of talk to these people. They might have deals for you. They're not supposed to do that, right? There's rules about this sort of thing, and they can't steer anyone like that. That being said, they do a lot of events and a lot of educational type stuff, both online and offline. So we mentioned a conference we went to. These happen on a large scale. You can easily find them by Googling around. They also happen on a smaller scale, like city to city, right? Like oftentimes these custodians will have, in essence, like an event marketing team, and they'll be going from town to town hosting. And this is probably coming back to life now, post-pandemic, where they're going to be meeting with people and putting on events and talking about the stuff you can invest in, what to be careful for, what to look for, things like that. Great place to network with people who have these accounts already or are thinking about opening them. I would throw that out there, both the larger ones and the smaller local stuff, and also online. Like these companies do a lot of webinars, educational type stuff. You could not only attend, but possibly present, maybe sponsor, stuff like that. There are many, many different ways to reach, to build a relationship with self-directed IRA investors who could end up in deals with you.
And also, if you're in, the Hard Money Mastermind coaching group, you've probably seen the capital raising modules that we have in there, the masterclass, and we talk a lot about that inside there. So follow that same program of trying to reach out to people in your, your immediate and your second, whatever it's called, LinkedIn's, what's the term? Circle?
Oh, yeah.
However, LinkedIn
degree.
Second
first degree,
first degree, and second degree people that you know. And the reason why is you reach out to someone, they're interested in working with you, right? Most of the time, they might not even think about using their retirement account with you. They're probably just saying, okay, cool. I've got some investable cash. I don't want to put it in the market anymore. I got $100,000. I want to work with you and do a note with you. Well, guess what? Have that conversation with that person and say, by the way, do you have a self-directed IRA or do you have a retirement account? You could potentially invest in a note with us this way. A lot of our capital investors started with cash, and then they're like, well, I can do self-directed IRAs as well. And then that was a way for them to do more and more and more volume and get involved with more and more deals as well. And, they told their friends, hey, what do you invest your retirement account in? So just make sure you're vocal about it and you're spreading the word to your sphere, because that'll go a long way. And keep in mind, here's another little hack. Like a lot of real estate investors that are flipping houses or buying rentals that have money, that have been in the game and successful, they use their own cash to buy deals, but they're not using, a lot of them don't want to mess with their self-directed IRAs to buy deals with, because honestly, it's a pain in the ass. And if they've done it before, they realize it's a pain in the ass. Typically, successful real estate investors know that they want to use their own funds to buy and own real estate because they get the tax benefits of that, but they're not getting that tax benefit inside a retirement account. They're not getting, the depreciation and the real estate benefits of it. So private notes is perfect for a self-directed IRA to put into a retirement account. Just based on how it gets taxed and everything else. So it's something to really think about.
Yeah. In addition to that, the tax benefits and everything else, I'd also throw in that a big part of the reason why people even end up with a self-directed IRA is because they want predictability, right? They don't want the volatility, which is exactly what note investing is, right? You're going to put, participate in a loan at 12%. It's going to pay you 10, that sort of thing, whatever it may be, 9. Predictable. It'll go out, it'll fund, payments will come in, pay off later. It's a really, really good vehicle for self-directed IRAs. So, I think that's about it for me. I also wanted to include this podcast as part of the intro for the training that we're doing this next coming week for anybody who is a premium member of the mastermind group. And again, you can get a free account, you can get a premium account. Check it out anytime, hardmoneymastermind.com. And we will see you inside.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you'd enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.